I am against this treaty, not because I am a man of war, but because I am a man of peace. I am against this treaty because it will not end the centuries of conflict between the two nations of Great Britain and Ireland. Eamon de Valera. After the assassination of Sir Henry Wilson, the Irish Republican Army had left the Free State, and especially Michael Collins, no other option. But even still, Collins attempted to delay, still trying his best to negotiate and do anything to spare his former comrades, especially because now the British had loaned artillery to the Free State. But on June 26, the IRA kidnapped Free State General J.J. O'Connell. Collins and the government delivered an ultimatum on the 27th of June, 1922. Release O'Connell and stand down within the next 24 hours. Still, Collins tried to delay, but when time ran out on the 28th, Michael Collins gave the order. For 3 days, similar to the firing on the GPO, the Free State troops fired on the four courts. On the 30th, following an assault by Free State troops, the four courts surrendered. But there are another 500 IRA under the command of Cathal Brugh across the city, holding certain positions. At this point, we need to realize the IRA did not have the weapons or supplies the Free State did. So not only was it 500 versus 4,000, but it was better armed 4,000 with armored vehicles, artillery, and heavy machine guns. The IRA had small arms and rifles, and occasional small machine guns, or light machine guns. By July 5th, 1922, the Free State had secured Dublin. Cathal Brugh would die on July 7th when he was shot in the leg and bled to death. Now, the next move for the IRA was going to try to win the people's support in the countryside, realizing the people were exhausted from the fighting in the cities. But Collins and one of his generals, Richard Mulcahy, began a gigantic offensive with 14,000 Free State soldiers. Lynch commanded a force of 15,000 IRA, but as I said with the Battle of Dublin, the IRA did not have the weapons to take on the Free State. Also, the war was quite brutal, because you had two sides that were familiar with one another's strategy. As time passed, the IRA began to pull back towards the rebel county itself, Collins' home of Cork, which Lynch had declared the Munster Republic, as Cork was the largest county in the province of Munster. But wherever the anti-treaty forces went, the Free State was there to meet them, carrying out attacks debatably worse than the British had ever done. Michael Collins himself was being emotionally torn by the continued conflict. One of his best friends, Harry Boland, had been killed early on and had taken a toll on Collins, who had now been trying to make peace with the anti-treaty IRA. In Cork, large sloughs of land had been reclaimed, and Collins was inspecting those territories. It was also believed that he was possibly going to meet with de Valera to negotiate an end to the bloodshed. On August 22nd, 1922, Collins was on his way down a road in Cork, in a place called Bail-na-Bla. A sentry had cleared a road, but little did he and his convoy know the sentry was an anti-treaty IRA man. And he, as soon as Collins passed, rallied his squad and went to the hills above the road. The ambush began around 8 o'clock p.m. The Free State soldiers fired up as the IRA fired down. But after all shooting, the only casualty was Michael Collins himself. He'd be brought to the nearby town and laid in state until his body was brought back to Dublin for burial. Eamon de Valera would have no knowledge of the attack, would go on to say, "It's my considered opinion that in the fullness of time, history will record the greatness of Collins, and it will be recorded at my expense." Richard Mulcahy would be made the new commander of the forces and would retaliate with executions of IRA prisoners for the murder of Collins. The Free State offensive would finish soon after Collins' death in a victory for the new government. The new head of the Free State, W.T. Cosgrove, would assume control and keep Mulcahy in command of the army. Following the pacification of the IRA large columns, a brutal guerrilla war began. Again, the IRA would strike, then run back to the hills. But this time, many of the Free State men knew who the IRA were and knew where to find their loved ones and families. Now, with the Free State Army bolstered to 55,000 men, Mulkey would begin a brutal campaign of terror against his former comrades. Lynch would finally get caught up to in 1923. After being on the run for so long, he was hiding out in Knockmealdown Mountains on the Tipperary-Waterford border. The Free State troops were closing in on him, and he decided to make a run for it. But he would unfortunately ran right into a squad of 50 Free State soldiers. Lynch would be wounded, and he would later die on April 10th, 1923. His successor, Frank Aiken, was more of a realist of the situation. The skeletons of the IRA would not be able to take on the continuous strengthening of the Free State. On May 24th, Aiken gave order for all IRA to stand down and dump all their rifles in certain areas in order to spare what was left of the IRA the disgrace of a surrender. The war officially ended. De Valera himself actually supported the end to the fighting, naming the remaining IRA the Legion of the Rear Guard, who continued the fight. He would remain in hiding until he decided to make a campaign appearance in Ennis in County Clare. He'd be subsequently arrested at this appearance in August of 1923 and be sent back to Kilmainham Gaol. He shortly would be sent to Arbor Hill, which overlooked the graves of the 1916 leaders, before he was released in May of 1924. Then after, he would found his own political party known as Fianna Fáil, a conservative populist party that is actually in a coalition government in control of the Dail and Irish today. 1,726 Irish men and women were killed in the Irish Civil War. Now, as far as civil wars go, this isn't very large. But in context, this happened in the 20th century. Ireland is not a large nation, and the war was only 2 years, really. Most civil wars we see are large-scale army versus army. This was an army versus guerrillas, and they defeated the guerrillas. Plus, many of the deaths were sadly executions. In Ireland, the people would much rather forget the Civil War, especially because of Michael Collins' hope of the treaty being a stepstone, would come to fruition in 1937 when Eamon de Valera, as chairman of the Executive Council, established the Irish Constitution of 1937, stripping all policy of the Free State and officially cementing the Irish Republic declared in 1916. De Valera would serve as the Taoiseach, which is the Irish equivalent of a prime minister, and then nominate and elected for president was a man named Douglas Hyde. Next week we get a little more modern, actually so modern that many of our viewers may actually remember this time period, sadly. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed and liked the video. If so, please like, share, and comment. We love the conversations. We love the interactions. It really does help the community grow. Speaking of community grow, if you're new to the channel, please hit that red subscribe button in the bottom of the screen and join our growing community. Thanks so much. We hope you enjoy, and we'll see you in the next one.